Dear Blizzard, can you please stop printing OP Demon Hunter cards? Please. We're begging you. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel and to another Scholomance Academy card review. And first up, we have another dual class card for Priest and Warlock. We saw a couple of these in the last episode. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out. Some really cool cards there. But this is the Flesh Giant. It's another giant to add to the pool of, already like so many giants in Hearthstone. And it's obviously going to be an 8/8 stat line. It's an 8 mana 8/8. Cost 1 less for each time your hero's health changed during your turns. So obviously this is similar to the card that we saw yesterday, which was when your hero's health changed this turn, destroy a minion. Now making more use of that kind of effect and discounting this giant every time your health changes. And obviously it's pretty easy for Priest and Warlock to change their health simply with just their hero power. Obviously that will decrease the mana of this by 1. But there are also other ways, and namely in Warlock, there are a lot of ways to kind of damage yourself on your turn. Note that this obviously has to be on your turn, so it doesn't count when your opponent like hits you in the face. That doesn't reduce the cost of Flesh Giant, otherwise it'll be way too OP. But think about Warlock, for example, right? Think about Zoo. They have Flame Imp. They have a lot of cards, they have Neversat Thresher. They have the Disease Vulture. They have that Ash Tongue dude, the 1 mana 1/4 that, whenever it takes damage, it deals damage to the hero. A lot of different cards that can damage, the hero and thus changing the health of it, which will all reduce the cost of this Flesh Giant. And if a sort of Zoo, which I kind of hinted at last card review, if some sort of Zoo can exist in the new meta, this card will 100% be in it, because it's really strong. It can be discounted quite quickly, I feel like. Even if you just tap on 2, that's already discounted by 1. If you play, let's say you play Flame Imp on 1, you tap on 2, maybe Neversat Thresher on 3, and then you attack with it obviously on on turn 4. That's already going to be a 5-cost giant, and then you can play it on turn 5 as an 8/8, right? But let's say you discount a bit more, you tap a bit more, you maybe play some couple more Flame Imps. You can pretty effectively get this down to 3 or 4 mana pretty quickly, I feel like, and put this onto the board for a lot of like tempo swing, or either for a bit of refill, which is something that Zoo didn't really have before, right? The main issue with Zoo is that if it lost the board, it normally just lost the game. But this does provide Zoo a little bit more stability and a little bit more comeback as well. So pretty good in that. Now let's think about Priest. Obviously this is a dual class card, so you've got to think about both classes. Can this really be used in Priest? I mean, will Tempo Priest be a thing? I don't think this will fit into Galakron Priest, because that's a control deck, and this doesn't really implement anything into that deck. The deck's already really set. The 30 cards are really already just kind of set out, and you don't really want to be playing, just even if it's 0 mana, I don't think you want to be playing this as your win condition. But if some sort of Tempo Priest does exist, maybe this card can go in it. I just don't see that many ways of changing your health outside the hero power in Priest. So I think definitely this is better than Warlock. Maybe if they release some new cards, maybe have some like healing effects that can heal your hero like separately, like 1 health, 2 health in like intervals. If they release some sort of card like that, maybe this card will be good. But for now, I don't see this as being a Priest card. I do see it as being a Warlock card, though. I think it possibly can go into some sort of Zoo. And with the cards from yesterday, maybe some sort of Zoo can exist. So because of that, guys, I'm actually going to give this card a 6 out of 10. I think it possibly can go into the new Zoo deck. And if more Priest cards are released, it can create a new Priest, Tempo Priest archetype. And if that does exist, obviously this card will go in it as well, I think. So because of that, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It possibly can creep into a tier 2 deck. If Warlock Zoo becomes a thing. Okay, so the next card is Cabal Acolyte for Priest, a 4 mana 2/6 taunt with Spell Burst, which is obviously the new effect in Scholomance Academy. Gain control of a random enemy minion with 2 or less attack. Now, just a little reminder for you guys, if you guys don't know what Spell Burst means, or if you haven't seen any of those cards yet, basically a card with Spell Burst will activate its effect after the first spell has been cast when it's on the board. For example, if you play this onto the board and then you cast a spell, this effect will activate. And this, guys, is a very strong effect as well. Gain control of a random enemy minion with 2 or less attack. It's got the Cabal Shadow Priest effect, but it's also got the Shadow Madness kind of effect as well. It's like both of those cards come together, because this card says gain control and Cabal Shadow Priest says take control. And the difference between that is when you gain control of something, and that's the thing that Shadow Madness says on its text as well, it means it can attack instantly. It doesn't have the summoning sickness, it can attack instantly. So when you steal something with this card, that card effectively has charge, right? Which is absolutely insane. Obviously, the only downside to this card is that it's random. So you have to have the enemy has to have a 2 or less attack minion on their side of the board. And if they have more than one, right, maybe they have, a really good target that you want to get, but they also have a 1/1, right? Then you're kind of rolling a dice to see what you want to get. So the fact that it's random does limit this card a little bit, but I think this is still incredibly strong. There are a lot of priest cards which kind of lower the attack of certain minions, namely Lazul's Scheme. So if you can, Lazul's Scheme, and that's 0 mana as well. So if you play this, you have a Lazul's Scheme which has been, brewing up in your hand. You can play this with Lazul's Scheme, and even if they have such a wide board, if they only have 1 minion with 2 or less attack, it will guarantee take that minion, and you can manipulate that with Lazul's Scheme, and I think that's incredibly strong. Will this see playing Galakron Priest? I think honestly this will. I think the power level of this card is absolutely insane. I really, really like this card. Just because you're able to manipulate what minion you really control. I know it says random, but there are a lot of priest spells that can allow you to manipulate what you get. And even if you don't, guys, against aggressive decks, this is just a 4 mana 2/6 taunt. That's really good, right? The fact that this has taunt, it makes it really defensive, so it's perfect in the control deck. Even if you don't get spell burst, right? Let's say you're playing against Demon Hunter, two attack on this can be really good against its minions. You just play this on turn 4. They're gonna have quite a difficult time getting through this. A bit like Bone Wraith, a little bit less good than Bone Wraith, but it's pretty good still. 2/6 taunt, as I said. So because of all of those reasons, I'm actually gonna give this I don't know. It's a bit of a toss up. I'm actually gonna give this an 8. Okay. I might be wrong about this, but I think this is going to be a tier 1 card. I think this will be in Galakron Priest for sure. It might even be some sort of Tempo Priest if that exists. It could pair up with the Giant that we saw previously. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I think in a vacuum, this is such a strong card, right? It's basically mind control as well as the Shadow Madness effect as well. Let me know what you guys think. This card is pretty interesting. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But yeah, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Okay, guys, they fucking done it again. They've done it again. Another OP Demon Hunter legendary. You guys have seen the title. This is also a dual class card as well. We've got Demon Hunter and Hunter. It's a very cool combination, of course, the 2 Hunter classes. But this card, guys, is absolutely insane. Ace, Hunter, Kreen. Your other characters are immune while attacking, and it's a 3 mana 2/4. And I'm lost for words. This is OP. This is so strong. I cannot believe they printed this again. This is kind of like the same reaction that I had when Kane's Sun Fury was announced in the last expansion. I was like, that card's going to be OP. It's going to be nerfed. It did indeed get nerfed recently, and I think this card will be nerfed as well, just because it's absolutely insane, right? Let's just think about Demon Hunter first and foremost. If you play this on turn 3, right, in an aggressive Demon Hunter deck, and you have a couple of mana and 2 mana minions already set up onto the board, they are basically immune for that turn because you get to play this onto the board and attack, and you can take value trades, right? Against aggressive mirror or against the actual mirror. This card is insane. Basically, whoever draws this card first pretty much wins because you're able to just take value trades and your minions take no damage at all, right? And the fact that this also says characters means that you're able to swing your face into minions and also take no damage. That's one of the issues with, obviously, Warglaives did get nerfed, but that was one of the biggest issues with Warglaives is that, obviously, it meant that you took a lot of damage to your own face. But playing this card, right, you're able to play this, either on 3 or even in the late game, and then swing a bunch with your face and just take no damage and just clear the whole board. Absolutely insane. Similarly with Hunter as well. Just think about Hunter now. Probably the strongest deck in Hearthstone at the moment, and I 100% agree with that. This just fits right in, right? Maybe you have a Fairy Dragon on turn 2. Maybe you played like a Blazing Banner Mage on turn 1. You play this on turn 3, you could take some value trades, right? You win the board instantly. If it's the mirror, you win the game. If it's another aggressive deck, you win the game. Maybe it's against the control deck, okay, right? Maybe then you save this for the late game. Maybe you have, I don't know, like a Rottnest Breakdown or a Fellwing, right? Then you play this on like turn 7 or turn 8. You could take a value trades again. You could push through, right? You can keep your minions alive. It's just so good. And the fact it's 3 mana, it's very cheap. You can play this whenever you want. 4 health is pretty difficult to deal with as well. Like, you could possibly just play this on turn 3 and be okay with it. It's not got the best stat line, but it's not bad. It's okay, right? And obviously it doesn't have an immediate effect onto the board itself, but the effect that it generates for your other minions and your face as well. I think that's the big thing. Like, if you have weapons, which both these classes obviously do, any weapons just get so much better. So I mean, this card just insane. It's 10 out of 10. It's 100% 10 out of 10. I don't even need to like, you know, it's obvious. It's 10 out of 10 from me. Like the first 10 out of 10 I've given for this expansion, but I think this is, I mean, disagree with me if you want, guys, but this is fucking OP. All right, so we've got a very interesting Mage card up next. It is called Mazaki Master Duelist, 5 mana, 3/8. Very interesting stat line. And it says, after you cast a spell, gain spell damage +1. Okay, very interesting card. Firstly, the stats, kind of a weird stat line. It does have 8 health, so it is pretty, you know, hard to kill, I guess. And it's pretty anti-aggressive. However, it doesn't have Taunt. It doesn't have Rush. So if you play this on turn 5, you know, if you're playing against an aggressive deck, they can just ignore it. However, the effect does kind of make it a must-kill for the opponent, because if you allow this to stick for the Mage, they can just chain a bunch of spells, and obviously we know that Mage does have a lot of cheap spells in terms of Rare Frost, Magic Trick, and stuff like that. You know, drop a Sorcerer Apprentice down, they all cost 0. You guys can, you know, see where I'm going with this. There could be some sort of combo opportunity. But if you play this, the opponent kind of just has to deal with it. So once again, it kind of has pseudo-taunt, even though it doesn't actually say taunt. Your opponent has to kind of deal with it. However, it's really, really expensive. Right, it's really hard to kind of fit this into one turn and get a combo out of it, because even if you're at 10 mana, you have to spend half your mana just by playing this minion. Then you have 5 other mana to kind of kill your opponent or do the combo. Right, let me think. Maybe you play this, maybe you play Sorcerer Apprentice, maybe you play another one. All your spells are really cheap. Okay, you can play a bunch of cheap spells. You can play like Rare Frost, and then you can play Magic Trick, discover another cheap spell, Arcane Breath, etc., etc. You know, you can get like a 5 or 6, you know, plus spell damage. And then maybe what are you going to do? You have like 2 or 3 mana remaining. Like, how are you going to kill your opponent with maybe some Frost Bolts? But then it just requires so many cards. I just don't see it as happening. And obviously people are going to try it. People are going to try this combo, and people are going to try the OTKs. And I can see it already. And I'm definitely going to be giving it a go as well. I think it's a really fun card. But in terms of competitive viability, I just don't see it being very good. Obviously, you can't use it in Spell Mage, which is the deck that really wants to use this. Obviously, you can get it from Font of Power, which is pretty strong. But you can't run it inherently in that deck, because obviously it's not a spell. So I just don't really see this card going into anywhere at the moment in any Mage deck. And I don't really see it creating a Mage deck either. There will be kind of this meme combo deck maybe around this card. But I think that's all it's going to be. I think it will just be a meme. And for that reason, guys, I'm actually going to say this is a 3 out of 10. It will see some experimentation, but ultimately it's going to fall by the wayside. Okay, moving on to Reddit, guys. We have another card. The Ceremonial Maul. It is another dual class card for Warrior and Paladin. You see the red and the yellow there. 3 mana 2/2 weapon with Spell Burst. Summon a student with Taunt and stats equal to the spell's cost. Okay, so it's another weapon for obviously these two classes which love to use weapons. But it's only a 2/2. So obviously for a 3 mana weapon, you'd love for it to be a 3/2. And the fact it only has 2 attack does limit it a little bit. But okay, it has an effect. It has Spell Burst. And you basically, when you cast a spell for the first time, you get to summon this kind of token minion that has Taunt. So kind of anti-aggro a little bit there. Okay, sure, has Taunt. And it's going to be stats equal to the spell's cost. So for example, if you cast a 5 cost spell, it's going to be a 5/5 Taunt. If you cast a 7 cost spell, it's going to be a 7/7 Taunt, and etc., right? The issue I have with this card is A, it's a spell burst, which means it only goes off once. You can only get this effect once, right? You have to kind of preload this weapon onto your hero. You kind of maybe sometimes have to not swing with it just so you can get the spell into the late game, because this is 3 mana, right? Let's say you play this on turn 3, and maybe you play a spell next turn that's 4 mana. You're only getting a 4/4 Taunt, right? Is that worth it? I don't know if that's worth it. You have a lot of setup there. You have to run a suboptimal weapon in a class, you know, that already has either Livewire Lance, Anchor, Wrench Caliber, or in Paladin has the, you know, the Murloc weapon that, you know, the one that gives you a Murloc whenever you attack, the Rod. So, like, those weapons are just better. Why would you run this, right? The only reason you'd run this is if the Spell Burst effect was worth it. And having 1 token for the game is not worth it. It's just a continuous effect. If this wasn't Spell Burst, this card would be broken, because it would demand weapon removal. But because it only happens once, that's what Spell Burst is. It's the first time you cast a spell. I think this is very underpowered. And there's not that many spells you want to use with this anyway. Let's look at Warrior, for example, right? The current Warrior decks, they don't really run many spells. Maybe you go to a Control Warrior then. Okay, maybe they play Shield Block. Alright, you get a 3/3 Taunt for free. Like, not really a big deal in my opinion. Maybe, you know, you play, I don't know, a Brawl or something. You clear the board, you summon a 5/5 Taunt. Okay, but it's just not impactful enough. I don't think that's powerful enough. And if you look at Paladin, you could argue, yeah, maybe you want to use it in pure Paladin. Okay, but the spells are kind of anti-synergistic, right? Because you have Libram spells which kind of want to be discounted, and if they get discounted, they're obviously not going to summon as high stats of a student, right? Like we have all the Libram cards, like let's say play Libram of Hope, you get an 8/8 Taunt Divine Shields, but maybe it's like 5 mana, you only get a 5/5, when you actually would rather had a 9/9. But because of the Libram synergies, you know, it's going to be cheaper. Let's say you play Libram of Justice, well, that equips the weapon, so it kind of just completely negates this. So it's just very, very awkward to use. I mean, I don't see a deck currently that can use this card. I also don't see, you know, a new archetype that will arise based on this card. I think this is very weak, and I honestly think this is going to be a 2 out of 10. Like, it's a trash card. I don't think this will see play at all. The fact it's an epic is kind of sad because some of you guys will pack it, and it's going to be terrible. I think this is just bad. I'm not giving it a 1 because I think it might see a little bit of experimentation. Because it has spell burst, it's a new effect obviously, and it has a dual class thing, so people might be like, oh, it's a dual class thing, it might be good, but ultimately it's terrible in my opinion. Okay, next up we have this crazy shaman card, Totem Goliath. 5 mana 4/5 totem card. Death Rattle, summon all 4 basic totems, and it has overload 2. I'm kind of on the fence with this card, right? Help me out, guys. What do you guys think? Because one side of me wants to say this is OP and this is super, super strong because this has a death rattle that summons 4 tokens, right? And it summons 4 totems that, you know, has synergy obviously in Shaman, right? We have Totemic Surge, we have Totemic Might, which is still in the meta right now. We have Splitting Axe. So you can definitely make use of that death rattle. But the other part of me is saying, well, this is just really, really slow. It's 5 mana, right? It also has overload 2, so when you play this, next turn you're only gonna have 4 mana if you play it on curve. I mean, the stat line is okay, honestly, and it's also a totem itself, so you can kind of maybe play Splitting Axe on this itself, on the Goliath itself. So I think the fact that it's a totem itself does make it quite decent. Obviously, at the moment, it doesn't go into any deck. I mean, obviously, it does go into Totem Shaman at the moment, but Totem Shaman right now is terrible. And Shaman right now is obviously terrible as well. So at this moment, I don't see this card being good, honestly. Like, I think this is really cool. I think it's a really cool card, and obviously there's a lot of like token synergies. You can run Bloodlust, right? You're summoning 4 tokens as death rattle. That's always really scary, especially when those tokens actually have synergy with your deck, right? Because you can put Totemic Surge, you can put Totem Synergy cards, and the Totemic Reflection thing that copies the totem into your card, into your deck. Sorry. So obviously the Totem Shaman right now would love this card, but Totem Shaman right now is the tier 3 deck, right? So do I think this card alone will bump that up to a tier 2 or tier 1? I don't think so. Do I think Hearthstone and Blizzard will produce more totem cards in expansion? Honestly, it's hard to say. The Overload 2 is really kind of... Oh, I don't know. The Overload 2 is kind of awkward. Overload 2 is definitely kind of awkward because it really limits kind of what you can do in the following turn. It does have a little bit of Overload synergy, so you're playing like Surging Tempest or something, so you kind of can sway it that way. I think this is decent. I think, you know, obviously given that Totem Shaman is a tier 3 deck, maybe this will push it to low tier 2. Maybe tier 2. So okay, so because of that, I'm gonna give this a 5. Okay, I'm gonna give this a 5 because I think Totem Shaman might be tier 2 because of this card. I think this obviously is very strong for Totem Shaman, but I just don't think Totem Shaman is going to be meta. They might produce like 5 more totem cards and I'm going to be looking an idiot and Totem Shaman's going to wreck everyone in the new expansion. But for now, I think this is going to be a 5 out of 10. It's a very cool design though, and I love the artwork as well. Alright, next up guys, we have a Demon Hunter spell, Glide. 4 mana. Okay, hold up a minute. Let me just take a breather here because this is crazy. Okay, this is a crazy card. Shuffle your hand into your deck. Draw 4 cards. Okay. What? No, wait, there's more, guys. There's more. Outcast, your opponent does the same? Wait a minute. Let me just think about this, guys, because when I first saw this card, literally like an hour ago, I was completely bemused. I was like, what is going on? I couldn't understand this card. I had to think so long about what kind of archetype wants to use this card. And here are my conclusions. I think this card is great for aggro Demon Hunter. And hear me out. The base text of this card says, shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 4 cards. This means that even if you have no cards in your hand, and maybe if you only have 1 card in your hand, you're still gonna draw 4 cards. So this is a very good refill for Demon Hunter in the late game, right? It's basically 4 mana draw 4, which is incredibly strong. Because you can dump your hand, and then you can pay 4 mana to draw 4 to refill your hand. I think that's how it works. Because it says draw 4 guaranteed. Like, it doesn't depend on how many you shuffle. It's not like a plot twist effect. So because it always draws you 4 cards, yeah, it's really good for aggro Demon Hunter just because of that. I think it's insane because it just gives you so much refill, right? It's like Skull of Gul'dan. It's not as good as Skull of Gul'dan, but it's like another Skull of Gul'dan, right? And would you want to run 4 Skull of Gul'dans with 2 of them being less good? Yes, I think so. So I think this is really good for aggro Demon Hunter. And the second reason why I think it's really good for aggro Demon Hunter is because of the outcast effect, which obviously we know that Demon Hunter can make use of very effectively. So the reason I think that's really effective is it says your opponent does the same. Now, let's imagine, just picture this in your head, guys. You're in an aggro matchup, you're Demon Hunter, you're playing against a control deck, okay? And, you know, you're getting to the late game, you're not quite getting there, you're kind of running out of refill. Oh, you top deck Glide. Fantastic, right? You shuffle your hand, maybe you only had 1 other card, right? Maybe you play that card and you draw 4 cards. Great, you refilled your hand. Furthermore, though, because of the outcast effect, your opponent has shuffled their entire hand, which might be full of value, full of removal cards, etc., into their deck, and they've replaced those cards with only 4, right? And that's actually a detriment for them because they probably started with 8 or 9 cards in their hand, and you've actually just basically reduced that to 4 cards. You've halved their hand size, and not only that, you've also taken away what they might have had in terms of removal and given them 4 random cards out of their deck. That is absolutely insane. That is absolutely insane in a control matchup. And what about the aggro matchup, you might be asking? Well, good question, guys, because in the aggro matchup, right, let's say about the mirror or something, you could actually position this so it's not in outcast, right? I think this is so cool. Like, this is why I love the outcast mechanic, guys, because outcast is saying, you know, it's always a good effect, right? All the outcast cards we've had so far, they've always been a positive effect. But I actually think for this, if you're in an aggro mirror, you don't want the outcast. Maybe, you know, you're both running out of fuel, right? And you just want to draw the cards. You don't want your opponent to draw the cards. Then you can somehow manipulate your hand to maybe play this first, right? It's kind of like an anti-outcast. And I think that's so interesting. And maybe sometimes even like, you know, if you know that, let's say they played Alexstrasza, you're playing against Hand Hunter, they played Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, they have 1-cost dragons in their hand. I think those are better, you know, if they went to your deck. You know, you play Glide, those 1-cost dragons go into the deck. When their hunter draws them, they're going to be full cost. And not only that, you've reduced their hand size potentially. Or even if you haven't, just doing that is so impactful, right? And it messes up their mulligans as well, because, you know, obviously people keep cards for specific matchups, but if you just play Glide, nope, denied, you know what I mean? You just, you know, make them redraw. This card is insane. Firstly, this is probably one of my favorite cards of this expansion so far, just because I think the design is so insane. You can kind of see me fangirling of this card right now, I apologize. But this design is so cool. Not only that, I think this card is insane. I'm actually going to give this a 9 out of 10, okay? I'm not giving it a 10, because I'm not 100% guaranteed that it's going to be going to see him playing the current aggro Demon Hunter lists, because there might be other options, right? Maybe double Skull Gul'dan just good enough, but I honestly think this is super strong. I think this will be used in aggro Demon Hunter. I think aggro Demon Hunter will see a little bit of maybe a change, but I think this will be see play in that, and possibly even some sort of control Demon Hunter as well. It's a 9 out of 10. It's going to be a tier 1, you know, it's going to be in tier 1 deck in my opinion. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. 9 out of 10. But that is going to be it for all the cards today, guys. Hope you have enjoyed the video. And yeah, hope you're going to enjoy the Demon Hunter field meta next expansion, because those 2 Demon Hunter cards today, absolutely bonkers. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the other cards as well. And hope you have a great rest of your day. If you haven't already, please like the video, subscribe for more Hearthstone content. I'm going to be reviewing every single card of this expansion, so look out for that in the coming days. And yeah, I will see you on the next video. Peace out, guys. Oh,